For every masterpiece like Tenkaichi 3 or Fighters, there's a game out there that made fans question if the developers had ever actually watched Dragon Ball. And today, we're ranking the top 5 worst Dragon Ball games to ever hit the market. The ones that made us laugh, cry, and maybe even rage just a bit. We'll be judging them based on gameplay, graphics, and also how badly they disrespected the source material. So grab your senzu beans because you'll need some emotional healing after hearing this list. Let's get into it. Kicking us off at number 5 is a game that tried to do something new and almost pulled it off. Dragon Ball Z Sagas. Now I know some of you have some nostalgia for this game, and honestly, I get it. This game was the first video I ever created on this channel, and the only DBZ game at the time that really attempted to blend open world exploration with beat 'em up and co-op gameplay. I mean, running around as Goku while your buddy plays Vegeta, it sounds like a dream until you realize you spend more time fighting the camera than the actual enemies. Every combo felt like mashing the same 3 buttons in slightly different pattern. And the enemies copy-pasted grunts who spawned like they were getting paid by the minute. You could probably beat half of this game by putting your controller down, letting the AI just trip over itself. The level design was barren. Giant empty maps with glowing orbs that felt like chores to pick up. But here's the thing. Sagas actually has heart. You could tell the developers wanted to make something ambitious. An adventure game that let you live the DBZ story. It covered the Saiyan through Cell sagas and had a few solid boss fights, especially if you're playing co-op. And when you were 12, blasting enemies together with your buddy, without even split screen, it was chaos, but it was also magical. Overall, Sagas is clunky, repetitive, and missing a bit of effort. But it can also be a really good time if you have a good friend over. Sagas represents a weird turning point in Dragon Ball games. It came out during that awkward mid-2000s phase when every studio wanted to experiment. What if Goku could explore giant maps? What if we made DBZ feel like an action adventure? Ambitious ideas? Sure. But it was like everybody forgot to make it fun. Still, I respect that it tried to break the Budokai mold. Most bad DBZ games are bad because they copy something that worked and drain it of all of its life. But Sagas tried something new and just tripped over its own tail. It's like watching Yamcha try to fight Beerus. You respect the courage, but you know how it's gonna end. And at number 4, we're entering some truly cursed territory. Dragon Ball Evolution, the video game adaptation of the worst movie to ever hit the fucking theaters. And made for the PSP, this 3D fighter somehow managed to be a bit better than the movie, but still make the list for my top 5 worst DBZ games ever made. So that's really saying something. The graphics are dull, the models look like wax figures, and the gameplay is like the developers saw Shin Budokai and said, what if we removed almost everything that made that game fun? Every punch feels like a slap with a wet pool noodle. The movement is sluggish, the combos barely register, and the camera has absolutely no idea what to do. This is the only game where Goku can throw a Kamehameha and still look bored doing it. The story mode is a bunch of static text boxes that speedrun you through the movie's plot, which, let's be real, wasn't worth reliving in the first place. Even the voice acting sounds like it was recorded at gunpoint. And I swear, every time you win a fight, you could just feel the shame in the actor's voice. If I have to pick one redeeming quality about this game, well, it loads pretty quick. Overall, Dragon Ball Evolution, especially the movie, isn't just bad, it's historically horrible. A relic of a time where companies thought if it's got Dragon Ball on it, it's gonna sell. And they're probably not wrong. And number 3 brings us back to the PS1 days, with Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22. And if you were a kid in 2003, you might have been hyped. This was one of the first DBZ games to hit consoles in the West. The box promised intense, fast-paced battles. What we got instead was a slideshow of suffering. You jump, wait 3 seconds, then Goku leaves the ground. The punches have no weight. The hit detection barely works, and half the time you don't even know who's winning until the fight just ends. It's like they built a fighting game and then somehow forgot to include the fighting. And here's the wild part. The game released in Japan in 1995, but the US version came out 8 years later. Basically just dusted it off the warehouse shelf and thought, stupid Americans aren't gonna notice. Even the bonus Super Saiyan characters were just glowing recolors. If nostalgia ever lies to you, it probably looks like Ultimate Battle 22. A game that's interesting for history's sake, but horrifyingly painful to play through. Now at number 2, we have Dragon Ball Z, Taiketsu. I was really going to put this at number 1, but it was a really tough decision. The handheld disaster that tried to give us an arcade-style DBZ battle on a Game Boy Advance. Developed by Webfoot Technologies, the same team behind the Legacy of Goku trilogy, but without any of that charm or creativity. The game technically qualifies as a fighter, but in reality, it's just 2 cardboard cutouts slapping each other in slow motion. There's no combo system, no flow, just button mashing and complete and utter disappointment. The aerial combat idea was nice, but it feels like floating through pudding. The sprites look like cursed action figures that melted in the sun. The background, completely lifeless. The best way I could describe it is like watching 2 PowerPoint slides duel for dominance. The soundtrack doesn't help either. It's a few looping beeps that could double as a fire alarm test. And to be fair, and I mean barely fair, Taiketsu had a surprisingly big roster for a GBA title, including Broly, who was nuts at the time, Cell, and Boo. So the ambition was kind of there, but the execution, non-existent. DBZ Taiketsu was a portable fighting game that somehow made me want to throw my Game Boy Advance into the time chamber and never come back. And before we do get to number 1, let's take a brief moment to go over some honorable mentions, because there were quite a few that almost, and I mean really almost, made the list. First up is Battle of Z. On paper, it sounded incredible. Team-based multiplayer, flashy visuals, and online battles. In reality, it was pure chaos. You'd lock onto an enemy, lose them in 2 seconds, and spend the rest of the match wondering if you were even doing damage. It was like trying to play fighters during an earthquake. And then there's Dragon Ball GT, Final Bout, one of the earliest 3D Dragon Ball games, and boy, does that show. It moved at the speed of a dying snail. The characters looked like action figures from a yard sale, and the hit detection was a cosmic joke. Still, that intro theme was absolutely fire. Too bad the game was not. But with those out of the way, and trust me, there was a couple more still, but with those out of the way, let's get on to the ultimate offender. Dragon Ball Z for Kinect. When this game was announced, fans thought finally, we get to actually be Goku. But in practice, it was more like finally I could throw my shoulder out, pretending to punch Frieza. The game had one job, make you feel like a Saiyan. Instead, it made you feel like you were performing interpretive dance for an audience of 0. You'd throw a punch, and Goku would just stare into space. Try Kamehameha, and your Kinect would say, sorry, didn't catch that. It's the only game where your living room furniture poses a greater threat than the enemies. In the gameplay, you just flail your arms until Kinect decides you've suffered just enough. To its credit, it did come with a bonus animated short, which, let's be honest, was the only reason to own this thing. Dragon Ball Z for Kinect is a motion-controlled nightmare, the kind of game that makes you wish you just stuck to watching the anime. It's flashy, ridiculous, and easily the worst DBZ game ever made. But there you have it, the top 5 worst DBZ games of all time. From Saga's clunky charm to Kinect's full body regret, these games remind us that not even Saiyans are safe from bad development cycles. Thankfully, modern Dragon Ball games have come a long way, because if Battle of Z or Taiketsu dropped today, the internet would absolutely explode. So you tell me, which of these abominations have you played? Drop a comment below and let me know which one of these scarred your childhood the most. Make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already to get this video out there to more people. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. It does me a huge solid and helps us hit our goal of 4,000. Trying to hit 5,000 by the end of the year. It's a big reach, but we're aiming for it. Anyway, guys, see you next time. Peace.
Yeah!